Oh, they're jumping on, okay. Hopefully soon.
I was going to say.
We'll get going. Welcome to the discussion session for Wednesday, September 24th, not Tuesday, September 23rd. Wednesday, September 24th. Manager McGill, will you please run us through the agenda?
Thank you, Mr. President. It is a very short agenda. The only item of business is the receipt of the capital improvement program for years 2026 to 2030 and the scheduling of the public hearing.
Great, thank you. All right, so we have a couple items, a couple great items on the discussion. We're talking about automated red light enforcement. We have, is District Judge? There she is. Our judge is here to talk about, to go through some of the procedural conversations or court proceedings here in the municipality. We have some workers' compensation stuff, boards and authorities, hopefully we have updates, but these two I'm very excited to talk about. So let's jump into item number 2, automated red light enforcement. Our state rep is here, Dan Miller, thank you. Senator Fontana's office, thank you very much for joining. Our state senator's here. We're also joined by Officer Posey from Abington, thank you very much.
Hello, everybody.
Thank you. So just as a quick intro here, is a little bit of a personal note, and then we'll get into some other numbers. But so I've been a commissioner now going on 8 years. The complaints that we've gotten from traffic complaints, speeders, people running red lights, safety is obviously a top concern. It's sidewalks and safe roads are, number one on our comprehensive plan. Our staff and our public safety members spend a considerable amount of time, if not all of their time, trying to figure out how to keep our residents safe and do a pretty good job of it. So we wanted to have a discussion about the potential of adding automated red light enforcement in Mount Lebanon. So we have our state legislators here to talk about the possibility of that, give us some updates of what's going on at the state level, because it's not like, hey, let's press a button and add cameras all over Uptown. It's a little bit more involved. And we are lucky enough to have Officer Posey with us, who has actually implemented this program in several other municipalities. And I think we make that report available to the public, right? Officer Posey sent us some incredible statistics about their program.
Yeah, we'll post it online tomorrow after.
Yeah, so we'll discuss it tonight, and Officer Posey's here to discuss it, and our own chief is here as well if you want to jump up. And our chief has obviously information about Mount Lebanon and has been with us for many years and knows this issue inside and out. So we'll jump into the discussion here. And our minister, perfect. So I guess maybe to kind of guide the conversation, here's my understanding, and I think our solicitor will maybe be on, but maybe, we could have our state legislators and our magistrate talk a little bit about this. So we have a certain number of accidents uptown, we have a certain number of injuries that happen uptown, and the goal in all of this is to reduce that, right? So that's kind of where I look at this. Understanding some things like what exactly is the law and why doesn't Mount Lebanon have something like this? That's one of the questions I have. And what can our residents do? They're not here to talk at discussion session, but I think we will have some people commenting later. What are some things that Mount Lebanon residents can do to better advocate for a change in the law that will allow us to add something like red light cameras? So maybe we'll start there if that's okay.
Sure. So good evening and thank you for the invite. Obviously, I'm glad to see so many friends and to be back at the commission, which is like obviously coming home. So glad to be here. See Jeff up there as well. It's good to see him too. The general, you asked a couple broad questions. I have found Pennsylvania to be very challenging when it comes to statewide solutions when it comes for policing in general. So during my 12 years roughly in the legislature, developing policy that does more than just like present a tweet, but actually get something done has been an issue. I do agree with you. I am obviously a resident of Mount Lebanon. I'm also a retired volunteer firefighter from Mount Lebanon and have gone on my fair share of traffic-related incidents, some that have resulted in death. And I still believe that the number one public safety issue in our community is traffic-related. So that is something that I think most families' experience would reflect. How to address it, obviously, takes a variety of factors, and I want to applaud your police for consistently being a great neighborhood asset and a community partner for many of the initiatives and discussions that I've had, I know. In relation to this issue in particular, I had a chance to go through the House Transportation Committee and talk to the chair of the Transportation Committee. He has told me that there is a bill that will be coming out, and he expects to address the issue before the end of 2025 in the House. The text of that, he is still working on. So the text of it has not been released. That being said, I don't find the text to be that confusing of previous efforts. So I gotta believe it will be somewhat similar to what the senator's office will detail a little bit as well. He did tell me it is something, he wants to present tools to towns, which is something that reflects my voting record traditionally as well. So what I tend to do is believe that towns should have options on the police tools as they wish to deploy, and that Harrisburg should be more open than it currently is when it comes to allowing those options. So I would note that one of the first things we did, and I forget, Keith, if you were manager at the time, but one of the chiefs of police, through a commission effort, had talked about speeding on 19. And my office ended up working with the state police to have a radar up here for like one day. And the speed to which speeding was occurring doubled, of course, what our existing methods of speed control would allow for. We are still a state that restricts that possibility, which, as we were talking about earlier, is another thing that shocks me in that we allow our police or trust our police to have a firearm, but somehow believe that they cannot be trusted to use a radar device. So all those things come into play. If I'm in the House, I would believe to be supportive of the efforts. I, again, haven't seen the text. I always want to see the text before I can tell you I'm good. But I gotta believe it's similar to Senator Fontana's effort. And so my expectation is it would be something that we would promote. Lastly, I would say, is there are, the chairman of the House Committee on Transportation is very direct with what he likes to do. So when he has a bill, I expect that bill to move. One of the bills that he and I have been working on, of course, is the digital driver's license bill. He has his particular focus. When he tells you he wants to get a bill delivered, my belief is that he will get the bill delivered. So I would expect action. The only problem to me that could slow down his 2025 progress is further delay on the state budget, because too much of the House and the Senate progress gets slowed down by budget negotiations, transit negotiations, transportation discussions, education, human service needs, anything else that comes up when we still don't have a deal in place. So the longer it goes on, I believe that the more likely you would see the bill come into 2026 discussion. Hopefully, when we both go back, we're so glad to see the Senate come back in the first week of October. Hopefully, we will be seeing a completed budget process somewhere about that time. But that's my update, and I'll stick around for any questions.
Do you have a sense, as we know, 101 to 100 in the House, how bipartisan this is? I mean, is this okay, so it's...
Yeah, I mean, and look, obviously, the senator's office can give you some insight as to that from the Senate perspective. Most of the transportation issues, most of them, have done it decently, to the chairman's credit. He's done a very good job at coordinating bipartisan bills. So he comes from a district that is a bit more of what may qualify as a kind of a swing district. So he makes more of an effort to try to bring people together. Not every bill is he successful with, but the challenge comes up as long as it's not a mandate, right? So if this is kind of the inverse, we're trying to obviously give options is the direction of the bill. If it's not a mandate, if it's a mandate, you have a problem. If it's options, you have much less of a problem. And that's our hope, is that people would see these types of initiatives as options for local control.
Okay, thank you.
And I think he comes from a district that has red light cameras.
Yeah.
Pretty sure. Cool, thank you.
Anything from?
Yeah, so thank you. My name's Keith Wayner. I'm Executive Director for Senator Wayne Fontana, who up until last night was going to be here today, but something came up at the last minute, so
Appreciate it.
unfortunately you're stuck with me. But
That's okay, I'm just gonna speak louder because people watching online.
Oh,
can
sure.
hear you better.
Yeah, so the Senator introduced a bill that would address this in Allegheny County. Without going back and giving the entire history, which I wouldn't be good at anyways, I know that this program first came about, I think, in 2002 in Philadelphia. 10 years later, it was amended to include the city of Pittsburgh, even though they are just now getting around to implementing it in several second and third class cities in the eastern part of the state, like Abington.
Right.
So his bill would enable municipalities that fit the current criteria with population, which Mount Lebanon does, and going through the chiefs training, Chiefs Association training, would afford those municipalities the ability to opt into the ARLA program. So that's what his legislation does. He does have bipartisan co-sponsors on it, which is always good when you're trying to move a bill as a minority member in the Senate. So that's where the bill is as it stands.
Yeah. Is it helpful to have residents reach out and tell you what they think of this kind of stuff?
Well, yeah, and I think the other thing too that might be from the Senate perspective is I think there's a couple other Allegheny County, like Lindsey Williams is on the committee, and the Transportation Committee, for example. I know Senator Vogel, I think, is a co-sponsor in Beaver County. What's helpful, I think, is some of these municipalities in Allegheny County, I think all the Allegheny County elected officials will be affected by, most of them will be affected by this, a lot of the reps and probably all the senators. So, Ross, McCandless, to the extent that those communities might have interest in this, would be helpful to know, just to try to galvanize support amongst all these other communities in addition to here.
The other thing I would offer to that is your chief, right? So the chief and chief association, generally, when they send a letter, which doesn't happen that often, but when they do send a letter in, it is something that cuts through a little bit more, in that Democrats and Republicans will, let's just say, be interested in the chief position. So if it's something that an individual chief has, which is fantastic, if it's something that's reflective of the association, it's even better in that regard, to say this is something that we would like to see as an option. The only thing I would note, and I apologize for this too, you were kind of right on it, is we got to keep in mind too that what we're looking for is something that doesn't just address Allegheny County. So that is the other lens, is that if it is viewed as something that is an Allegheny County focus, we lose. So it must be something that people recognize and care about as a statewide option.
Great, that's helpful, thank you. Great.
My understanding of the bill is, I think right now in Allegheny County, there would only be about 4 or 5 departments would be eligible to utilize it. I think they're based on a population threshold, and also I believe there's an accreditation requirement as well. So to be accredited and to have, I believe it's 30,000 or 25,000 residents, I think you only limit it to a certain number.
I think it's 20.
Okay, so again, you're not many out of the 30 municipalities, there's probably only a few that qualify for that based on my knowledge of the community, so.
Right.
Yeah, so I mean, you know, just to give you some numbers, I mean, if that's helpful, you know, for the listening public and anybody else, you know, we spend a lot of time on this and using a data-driven approach. You know, our approach to traffic really is informing, educating, and enforcing. First, we inform the public where these hotspots and problem areas are, and then we educate the public as to the dangers of unsafe driving. And then obviously enforcement is our third prong of that. And we do that in conjunction with the magistrate and other support systems we have and able to do that. You know, currently, if you talk about the uptown area, which you mentioned, Commissioner, we focus on that heavily. We have about 81,000 cars travel Monday through Friday on the section between Oakway and Castle Cannon Boulevard. So that 81,000 number is doubled at the area of Gilkison Road. It's about 194,000 down there. So in the area between Castle Shannon Boulevard and Oakway, that 81,000, the 3-year review period that we had since March of 2022, we've had 40 what are considered reportable crashes. Out of those 40, that's either a car needed towed or a person was injured to some degree. Out of those, there were actually only 23 injuries. So out of those 23 injuries, none of those were critical in that reporting period since March of 2022. And there were 2 pedestrian crashes, one of which the pedestrian was in a place they shouldn't have been. So to talk numbers in terms of the data, that's the data we have in that reporting period. So out of that, that's literally, you know, less than 0.0002% of the traveling and pedestrian public being injured in that 3-year period. In that roadway, in that stretch of roadway. So when we look at numbers, those are the numbers that we have to look at in terms of the safety. And I would echo that, you know, really everybody is doing their part to remain safe. Pedestrians are being where they should be. Drivers are doing the things they should do. Obviously, our enforcement and education efforts are working along with public information and getting that information out there. So I would say that based off of those numbers, that's a significant low number relative to the 81,000 cars, along with the number of, you know, tens of thousands of pedestrians that travel that roadway each week. So those are the numbers we have. We continue to work with the school district. You mentioned safe walking routes. That was a program that we had many years ago that the state sponsored. That program no longer exists. We're currently working with the school district to review our overall safety plan. We'll be working with Dr. Freeze and her team to really review, again, not only how safely children can walk to school, but also the demographics. Right now, we also know that our estimation is over 80% of the kids are driven to school every day. So really, what we also know is that things have changed and how people get places have changed. And so we're also going to comprehensively look at that with the school district and others and really review how that works and how to dovetail that in terms of whether standoff distances at school, whether traffic patterns around schools, really taking a whole comprehensive look at everything we can do to make the driving and walking experience safer for everybody involved, including the other modalities of transportation that people use. So, you know, when we talk about things like this, it's absolutely an arrow, you know, in the quiver that we can pull out and utilize. Again, I spoke with Officer Posey a little bit about some of the nuances of the program, and obviously, you know, with everything, there's an administrative burden, and there are things that are needed, required by us to deliver that. So,
Yeah, I think that's a good segue to Officer Posey's maybe presentation. And I guess the question that I would have, and we've talked about this, Chief, is what does the program look like from a staffing standpoint? What are some of the costs you've experienced, understanding that that might not be the cost tomorrow? And then some of the mechanisms, you know, like my understanding from talking to you, Chief, and also you, Officer Posey, is certain things need to get done with the issuance of these automated tickets. There's an appeals process, things like that. So maybe just start with, you know, in your experience, what does this program take to implement?
Well, everybody can hear me, okay?
Yep. Thanks.
All right, well, thank you for having me tonight. Again, Chris Posey, I'm with the Abington Police Department. I've been a police officer here in Abington for 28 years. I was a former Philly police officer before that. For those who don't know, Abington, we're eastern Montgomery County, right outside of Philadelphia. So Philadelphia, like you said, has had the red light cameras for years and years, and now they have speed cameras on Roosevelt Boulevard, implementing speed cameras in school zones. So that's something that we hope to someday have. As far as looking at this program, we started our red light program back in 2013. We decided to look at a couple of intersections where we could not do traditional enforcement. You couldn't put an officer out there and watch for red light runners. We were having angle crashes, which are the crashes where you're going to have more damage, bigger injuries at those intersections. So we went to implement the red light cameras there in 2014. In August of 2014, we started our warning period. In October of 2014, we went live. And at the time, we were just a two-person traffic safety unit. Here in Abington, we have 15 commissioners, and one of their biggest concerns, because traffic safety is probably our number one complaint, like you probably have there, was taking us off the roadway in order to look at these violations, to talk to people who may come in who have questions and everything. So right away, our chief at the time, Bill Kelly, made sure that anything related to the red light camera we were going to do on our off time. So basically, it's all overtime. So nights, after our shift, before our shift, we'll do reviews and everything, and all that is reimbursed by the fines that come in from the red light cameras. So the fine is $100. It's a civil penalty. It's no points. It doesn't get reported to the insurance company. So municipality can cover the cost of running the program. We can't make money. It's revenue neutral. So at the end of the day, every month I submit a report to our finance department, and at the end of the year, every quarter, and at the end of the year, I submit a report to PennDOT on what our expenses are, what the fines that came in, and what we've paid for our expenses and for the red light camera. So again, going back in 2013, we had a lot of meetings with camera companies, with PennDOT, with our internal, meeting at these intersections and everything. We kept a record of everything, so that when the cameras went live, we were able to be reimbursed for the personnel hours for all those meetings and everything. So at the end of the day, that this program does not cost the taxpayers of Abington anything. So I mean, up to this time, I have it on one of my slides here. So since 2013, we're just under about $740,000 that has been reimbursed back to Abington Township, and most of that is for the time that we spend dealing with the cameras, looking at the violations, maybe talking with the public. We also have one of our clerks who work in our office here, Rachel. She does a great job. She's one of the executive assistants, and she handles a lot of stuff for us, questions that citizens may have. If someone comes in and wants to drop a check off to be mailed in for their violation, maybe schedule a hearing. Even though the company can handle a lot of that, people still want to come in and talk about a violation, or just get some more information about their violation. So she handles a lot of that stuff. So part of her salary is billed towards the red light cameras, so that she takes care of that, so we don't have to come in off the street. In the beginning, it took a little bit, because we were the only municipality outside of Philadelphia that had a red light camera program. So we went down and met with the parking authority a few times, but we're not the city of Philadelphia. We're not Roosevelt Boulevard. We don't have the crash history that they have and the amount of traffic that they have. So we learned some stuff from them and then pared it down and made something that fit our township. So in the beginning, it was a little hectic, but I'll tell you now, it runs smoothly. We're a 3-person traffic safety unit now, and between the three officers, and then like I said, Rachel, who handles our administrative stuff, things run very smoothly. It does not interfere with our ability to go out there and do our regular traffic enforcement duties, our school zones, our crash investigations, anything like that. So like I said, it does run very smoothly at this point. And again, we've helped other municipalities get their programs off the ground, most of them being around here in Bucks and Montgomery County.
Talk for a minute about some of the info that you sent to us related to the stats of crashes are pretty amazing, and I wouldn't attribute that all to red light cameras. I'm sure there are other safety efforts that your police department has put in place, much like what Chief is talking about. We've had, like Look Up Lebo and other initiatives that we do that I'm sure affect, everything from speeding to traffic to crashes. What our magistrate does on a regular basis, I'm sure has an effect on that. But maybe talk a little bit about some of the changes that you saw after implementing the program.
So, sure. So again, before 2014, we had 10 cameras at 3 different intersections, and we had a total before the cameras. We looked at a period of the 7 years before the cameras and 7 years after the cameras, and we had 262 crashes at those intersections compared to 189 afterwards. So it was a 28% decrease. But the big thing was the number of our angle crashes went down 25%. What we continue to do, even to today, education's a big part of this. So we have Penn State campus, Abington campus right next door. We have Abington Memorial Hospital next door. We have the Willow Grove Park Mall in our township, Holy Redeemer Hospital. So we have a lot of people that drive through Abington, either going to the city of Philadelphia, coming from, and also these other places. So we try to get out as much as we can to civic groups, talk to them about the traffic in general, traffic education, the red light cameras. Before the red light cameras went in, we did a lot of, I think at the time, newspapers were still big. So a lot of interviews. We went out to any civic group that would have us. We talked about the big message boards. We've purchased a few of them now, but the county and our highway department had message boards. We put them out on 611 Old York Road, where some of our cameras are at, Welsh Road, to inform the public that they were coming. Again, since the program's been started, we'll do social media, Facebook Live, answering questions. And again, every August we have National Night Out, where we'll have information out there about the red light cameras. And every year we have a new crop of Penn State students coming in. So we try to get over there and talk to them. And a lot of them are international students. So we get to go over there and talk to them about safe driving habits, about the red light cameras. And really anything where we can go out there and do education. Enforcement is still, in that area, a big part of it. But, obviously we would like to educate people. Our whole point here is to get you to pay attention to driving while you're out there driving. There's so many different distractions nowadays, especially new cars. The first thing you see in a brand new car is a nice big video screen right in front of you. So we try to get that message out there. We do every quarter a Survival 101, where we have teenage drivers and soon to be teenage drivers at our training facility on a night when we go through a program about DUI, distracted driving, texting and driving. So we just try to educate any opportunity that we have to educate the public about their driving behavior.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Any comments on any of that stuff? Anybody else? Commissioners?
I would just, and Officer Posey indicated that the program really is revenue neutral.
Right.
Anything in excess goes into a fund for grants. We've actually received 3 hourly grants at the municipality. 2 of those to add turn lanes entering onto Bower Hill Road, and 1 for the lighted crosswalk that goes across Washington Road, so.
Yeah, we've been the benefit of
We have.
hourly programs in other areas. Yeah.
We
It's
just want to help.
Right, exactly. No, that's great. Yeah, I think that we get complaints about some of our programs from residents, like, or parking fees or tickets up front, like it's a money-making scheme, and it's just not the case. But it's pretty clear with this that it's, the goal is for increasing safety, reducing crashes, reducing issues like that. Like, I wish we had a big enough police force where we can put people at those intersections, but even then, it's not gonna stop people from running lights. It's not like an officer's gonna chase down a car on foot, someone who goes through a light, it's silly. But I think these kind of measures are certainly punitive after the fact, but I think the point gets across when someone gets a ticket in the mail from running a red light or, on Washington, they'll think twice about doing it next time they're on Washington. And we're not that dissimilar from Abington with the traffic flowing to and from the city on our route.
Officer, question for you. I know you mentioned that I think you said your accidents had dropped down by 25% roughly. I'm wondering, in that reduction, does the time that the officers have spent, how has the time that the officers would have spent on traffic been redeployed into other aspects that benefit the community? So, go ahead.
Yeah, I understand, and it's a great question because one of the big things I talked about angle crashes before, and that's usually where we see the more serious injuries. Vehicles have to be towed, roadways have to be shut down, those T-bone crashes. And usually they require multiple officers at an intersection, closing roadway down, follow up afterwards over at the hospital. And, the fact that you're dealing with people who are injured, sometimes you're dealing with families, you're dealing with kids, and you don't want to see that. As a police officer, our number one goal is for you to come through Abington, or if you live in Abington, have a pleasant experience. And if you, God forbid, do get in a crash, we want to make sure that you're taken care of. And that does take up a lot of, manpower hours out there, looking into this. So, those are hours that could be spent either we do park and walks. So we have a plenty of business areas. We do park and walks in our schools, just going through neighborhoods, doing traffic enforcement on other intersections. Like I said, we have Penn State campus. For those, we have a very large high school, and the high school drivers to get to the high school have to go through a residential area. So these are, with these crashes, especially these angle crashes, we're taken away from being able to monitor these areas and conduct enforcement there, and to just have a presence in business areas and everything because of the amount of traffic that we have through here, and then the amount of time that we'll spend on these angle crashes.
Thank you. Great question. Anything else anybody wants to add?
Good luck. I mean, obviously, good luck, Wayne County. We're hoping you're successful in both House and Senate getting this thing done.
Yeah. It's kind of interesting, right? Because we do have to wait for a change in law, but we've gotten a ton of complaints about this, and we're always, what we want to do is more than just say like, well, go talk to your rep or go talk to your senator and go try to change the law, right? I think having discussions like this, or people like Officer Posey who've implemented this and have practical, information about how it's implemented, how it affects the police, what it costs, things like that are all conversations that we'll have to have, even if it's only afterward. But certainly understanding what we can do to help those conversations along too, which is good. Thank you, Officer Posey, appreciate your time. Thank you for,
Anything I can do in the future, you have my information. I am more than willing to help our chief now, Pat Malloy. He's a big proponent of the cameras, and you know, like I told someone, we've been out to different municipalities all over Pennsylvania to speak with their board of commissioners, to speak with their residents, and to try to help them implement the program. So anything that we can do to assist you, because we've seen it here, it works. Obviously, it works in Philadelphia. You know, the speed cameras work. It gets you to think about how you're driving. And I just say this, large majority of our violators are people who, again, get a violation notice for one time. You have the people that have multiple out there, just like any officer tell you, there's people out there who are going to drive with their suspended license and they just don't care. But a large majority of the people are just regular everyday people. And when they get that notice in the mail, they know that someone's watching them, how they're driving. And that's our whole point here, is we want to get you to think about driving and how you're driving, because like you know, we have 7 elementary schools, a junior high, a senior high, you know, but 2 hospital campuses, a mall, and we have people, we're a walkable community, and we have people out everywhere. So we really want you to pay attention when you're out there driving. So like I said, anything that we can do to assist you, you know, I'm always here.
thank you, appreciate it.
Commissioner Umbrella, I have a question for Officer Posey. Officer Posey, I'm Hillary Wheatley. I'm the magisterial district judge for the community of the district that includes Mount Lebanon. What involvement, if any, does the program have with your community's district court office?
So right now, again, we've been live since 2014. We have red light camera hearings every quarter. When we first started out, and when I say red light cameras, it's here at the township. So it's a civil, with the red light cameras, unlike if anybody's had experience with bus patrol, the bus cameras. So with this, we have a person who was picked by our board of commissioners, who is our hearing officer. And every quarter we have a hearing officer, and we average about 833 violations a month. So, and every quarter we may have about 20 hearings. And most of those hearings are people that just want to, regular everyday people that just want to come in. And I'm sure, like Your Honor, people come in there and they did it, but they want to give a reason why, or they want to explain themselves. They feel guilty. You know, they want to talk to you. So really with our, if you want to appeal our hearing officer's decision, that's where it would go over to our DJ's office. And we've never had someone appeal one of our hearing officers' decisions into the DJ's office. So if that were to happen, if someone, when they're done their hearing, they have 30 days to appeal that verdict with our hearing officer here at the township, and they will notify us here in the traffic safety unit, and then we would go over to our district justice office, which is right across the driveway here, and we would set up a hearing for them through Judge Kessler, who would be our judge. But like I said, to this date, we have had no appeals to the DJ's office.
Doesn't sound like it's too dissimilar from our parking stuff now. We've got a hearing officer, and then if that goes beyond it, it goes to
Yeah.
you and the county, right?
I think that's right, and you know, as a resident, as opposed to sitting here with my
Judge Hillary.
my invisible robe on, you know, the thing about a program like this is, if it's not points and the only consequence is a monetary fine, the approach to that from a person who receives a citation is different from a citation that would have points consequences for their driving record.
It's more severe.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
Yes.
So more.
and
appeals.
that may be part of why there aren't a significant number of appeals from the violations, because the penalty is only a civil monetary fine that then would have to be collected through debt collection efforts by the municipality. It's not
Yeah.
paid.
And I think, I mean, the behavior is what we want to affect, to change. I would imagine some would get that monetary fine and be like, next time I'm on Washington Road or wherever it is, I'll slow down or pay attention, and some who might not.
I'm not sure who to direct the question to, but let's say one of my kids is driving the car. Obviously, the car is registered to me, I get the bill. What happens if someone else is driving? What happens in that situation?
I can answer that and say that the owner of the vehicle receives the violation notice, and it is a defense to the violation that you were not driving. And you are not required in presentation of that defense to rat on the vehicle.
So technically.
Let's try that again.
So Steve, your daughter is driving your car and runs a red light. And you at an intersection that has one of these cameras.
Right.
You, as the registered owner of the vehicle, attached to the license plate, because that's how they find you,
Of course.
gets notice of the violation. You would file an appeal that would then be heard by a hearing officer, presumably in this building. And you could come to that hearing and say, I was not driving, and here's proof that I could not have been driving because I was in Philadelphia.
Right.
But you are not, as part of presentation of that defense, to tell on the person who was driving.
So, okay.
So there is no consequence to the person who actually committed the violation.
Right.
And I can also say that you'd be surprised how many times that does happen often. And either the parents come in with the children, usually a teenage, early 20s driver, or in place of the owner of the vehicle, the son or daughter come in and say, I was driving my dad's car, my mom's car, and this is my violation here. And the parents tell them, it's your, and what we'll do is that's where, again, we can't transfer the liability over, but we can sure educate. We can sit there and talk with them, and we have them there in our boardroom for a few minutes, so we can sit there and talk to them. We can go through the video. We can explain to them what they did wrong, or what they did wrong if they already have not seen it, and just try to get that education and let them know, if an officer did stop you for going through that, now you're looking at a bigger fine. You're looking at points in your license, a young age. That's going to affect your insurance and your premiums and your parents' premiums, and that aspect has worked well when we've had that ability to talk with the people driving their parents' car.
Yeah, the education part.
I guess my question is at a state level. Why is this not obvious? Yeah, in terms of, why would you not give this tool to municipalities? Every municipality. I do not understand why no.
I don't know the answer to that. I can say that, I know one of the criteria is, going through the Chiefs Association. Some municipalities choose not to do it, but in terms of I think it's probably similar to this comment about, like, Rep. Miller made about, we trust our officers with handguns, but not with radar. There's this belief in part of the state about, no, that's too much, or that's an invasion of some kind. I don't know, there is that permeation.
It's entirely Keith's fault.
Are you sure it's not your fault?
That's why I was
Maybe no longer.
It sounds like what this bill is trying to address, like something
No,
that
look,
maybe is.
look, the reality of it, I know we could be here for 4 hours on that, but the reality of it is Commonwealth has been developed with a system that I don't think is at times the most efficient. And that if you and I were to design a state government, I don't think we would come up with how this design is currently, right? So the challenge is that as we look for how Harrisburg decides to exercise authority or not, meaning the legislature in this regard, decides to exercise authority or not, it is challenging because we're not at times as fast-moving as localities are to addressing changing circumstances. And in between that is a variety of, we are a big state with 13 million plus people in it, to which different questions come up and are viewed differently. So when the state is so embedded into an aspect tighter to local control, it becomes more difficult because local control can vary with perspectives that they would offer. So largely, I just think that Pennsylvania's bureaucracy as a state government is designed to be a little heavy-handed in some regards and not as flexible as it should. Or it's Keith's fault.
Keith's fault is the easier answer.
Pick a Keith.
In this case,
I was gonna say,
Keith's fault.
I think you were looking at it.
As it comes to enforcement and solutions, what I will comment on as the judge who presides over, not guilty pleas and your average everyday traffic violation is there is a large gap between perception and reality. And what people perceive to be the problems and complain about may not in fact be proven by the data in our community. And a one-off experience of a dangerous driver is not necessarily proof that there is a problem that needs a solution.
Yeah, I certainly understand that. I mean, we get comments a lot about speeding on, interior roadways. It's very hard to judge when you're standing next to a car going by how fast that car is going. And we've had areas where we've put in those boxes or we've done studies and it doesn't bear out the numbers. The average speed is not at a place where we need to put traffic humps in or speed bumps or other signage. We've looked at that dozens and dozens of times in the last couple of years in all different areas. There are some areas that are faster than others and where that stuff is certainly warranted and we've put them in. We've been very responsive to that, where the police have looked at studies and, looked at crashes in those areas, and we've been very responsive to where those things have occurred and have changed things. We've changed sidewalk designs, islands, traffic patterns, put, different barriers in, different signaling, different stripes, done a lot of that.
if I could, this has been very educational, we appreciate everybody's time. Is it possible to pivot to find out what District Justice, what tools she has in her toolbox? And we certainly hope to get this tool along with radar. But we are where we are today, so I'm curious, what
let Officer Posey go.
Thank you, Officer Posey. You don't have to hang around if you don't want to. It's been great. Appreciate your time and info.
Okay, like I said, anything you need, feel free to reach out.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jeff, you have to stay.
Darn it, Jeff. So I had reached out to Manager McGill just really to offer kind of an open floor to answer questions about the municipal relationship with my district court office and how citation filing procedures work, what tools are available to me if and when I am faced with a citation, what happens really procedurally from a paperwork and computer standpoint in my court when a citation is filed, so that commission and the public can be more informed as to what remedies I have available, remedies the municipality can ask for, and what happens when citations are filed. So I will just very briefly explain the internal procedures, and then I'll be happy to open the floor for questions.
Even before that, one of the questions that I get a lot is, what does the magistrate handle and what does the magistrate not handle?
Sure.
Right?
So I
if go
do
to
not
you-
handle parking tickets issued by the municipality.
Right.
I handle parking tickets issued by a Mount Lebanon or Dormont or St. Clair Hospital police officer or a state police officer. That's the big thing. But I handle a variety of things based on what the state constitution and the legislature has deemed to give in the district court jurisdiction. I handle civil disputes that have a nexus in Mount Lebanon or Dormont below $12,000.
So neighbor
Disputes, you need to sue a contractor because they absconded with your deposit, they did a bad job on work, you were in a auto collision and nobody has paid for the damage to your car or personal injuries, you bought a product that was not delivered, things like that, but mostly neighbor disputes are the bulk of my civil complaints. Landlord-tenant cases involving real estate in the district where the landlord is trying to evict the resident or business occupant for either breach of lease, non-payment of rent, code violations, building code, and fire code violations, filed by the enforcing municipality. What we call non-traffic violations, which are summary criminal citations, public intoxication, disorderly conduct, vandalism, which is actually under the state statute called criminal mischief. Truancy is also non-traffic, so excessive absences from school are non-traffic violations. Possession of a small amount of marijuana or drug paraphernalia may be a summary criminal violation, which is a non-traffic. I handle traffic violations issued by police officers within the district. And then the other big portion of my docket is criminal cases, where the crime is alleged to have occurred within the boundaries of my judicial district, and a complaint for a felony or misdemeanor charge has been filed by a law enforcement officer. Oh, and I can officiate weddings, swear in elected officials, issue emergency protections from abuse orders, and issue search warrants. So that's the jurisdiction of my court.
Got it. And then you mentioned.
Yeah, so procedurally what happens, day-to-day stuff that comes in, anything that is filed by way of a citation, whether that's a code enforcement violation, a fire code violation, a traffic violation, a truancy citation, that is filed with my office, and we are required to serve notice of that on the named liable party, whether that's the property owner in a code violation, the owner of a vehicle in a traffic violation, the driver of a vehicle in a traffic violation, or the parent or child in a truancy case, for example. We have to send notice, and the party that is named as the defendant in that case has the right to plead not guilty or plead guilty. It is their right. We don't get to decide that, except for juveniles who never get to plead guilty without a hearing, because there's nobody who really has authority to plead guilty on their behalf, because they can't sign a contract, they can't bind themselves as minors. So all juveniles get hearings in whatever case, whatever they are charged with, even if their parents or they try to plead guilty. So we send them notice. They get an opportunity in a certain amount of time to plead guilty or not guilty and request a hearing. If they plead not guilty, they get a hearing before the court. The hearing is scheduled based on a variety of things, including the court's standard scheduling procedures and officer availability. So because somebody has to come on behalf of the Commonwealth to prove the case. And if nobody appears on behalf of the Commonwealth, the defendant wins by default, because nobody has appeared to prove the case. But in any event, a hearing is scheduled based on officer availability, and then a hearing will take place. If a party does not plead guilty or not guilty within the time period that the type of case provides for, generally that results in the issuance of some sort of bench warrant, where a constable or law enforcement officer would notify the defendant that their failure to plead on that case has resulted in this existing warrant that could result in them being brought before the court by a law enforcement officer to answer to the case. And then we have a hearing. If the defendant has pled not guilty, we have a hearing, at which time the party that has filed the case has a burden of proof, and they have to prove their case by way of admissible evidence. It's my job then to rule on the facts and the law as presented and enter a disposition. Magisterial district courts have very limited official remedies if we're entering a remedy or a disposition on the record. I really can only fine people based on what the law provides for. And each violation has its own maximum or minimum and maximum potential penalty set by the law that I rarely have, or district judges like myself have very little discretion over. Sometimes there's a range of $25 to $500 or $50 to $1,000, depending upon the number of times the person has previously committed the violation or the number of days where the violation has existed without curing. That's most relevant in a code violation instance.
We get those a lot. I know we've had properties that have gone into the thousands.
Sometimes it is a fine of $25, for example, going back to our prior agenda item of your standard red light violation under the vehicle code. The fine is $25 and 3 points on your driver's license. That's not discretionary for my office. If you plead guilty or are found guilty of it, I don't have discretion on this disposition. All dispositions entered by my office have an automatic right of appeal to the Court of Common Pleas. Generally, it's a 30-day appeal period. And again, in order to prevail on the appeal, the Commonwealth officer who filed that citation has to appear at the hearing to present their case all over again. But big picture, the only remedy I have available in the district court on the record that is enforceable and collectible is a monetary fine. And so most of the time, I approach cases that involve fines with the goal towards curing and educating regarding the violation as opposed to imposing a fine, because it is this court's view that a penalty that is only a fine is only a penalty for poor people. And also, very often, that monetary fine could be better used curing the underlying violation. Now you have to show a good faith effort, make a good faith effort to cure the violation to get that benefit of the doubt from the court. But all I have available to me is monetary fines. I don't have the ability to revoke business licenses. I don't revoke driver's license, that's a PennDOT issue. I don't have the ability to shut down a business to force compliance. So I have limited remedies available to me, but it's really, the onus is on the filing party, the person who has brought the charges, to make the request for maximum disposition or maximum fine, maximum penalty. If that's the municipality or the law enforcement officer's preference, I always take that into consideration when making a disposition. I have a whole lot of informal, off the record, informal probationary sort of dispositions available to me to give people an opportunity to correct the behavior without an on-the-record formal disposition, and I offer those more often than not because the goal is compliance and education and not
Right.
punishment.
Right, like, I'm not sure that the municipality needs another $25 fine. The idea is change the behavior.
Right,
And if
yeah.
for some people, that fine may be the reason that makes them change their behavior, or it's a conversation with the magistrate.
Right, or, it's the potential
police
for points on their driver's license
Right.
that makes them change their behavior, or
Yeah.
revocation of their driver's license.
Right.
We know how important a driver's license is, especially with the pending potential transit cuts. A driver's license is super important to people to be able to get to work and get their kids to sports practices and whatever. So it's those sorts of consequences that often, and really the interaction between the law enforcement officer and the individual on the front end of the interaction that has an opportunity for education that corrects the behavior. It's not, it's very rarely gonna be a $25 fine from my office that solves the myriad complaints commissioners like you get regarding the bad drivers on the roads.
Yeah. Yes, that's true.
You mentioned about, it's statutory, it's very fixed. In those rules, is there any kind of increased fine for repeat offenders, or strictly, it doesn't matter if it's the first time a person went through the stop sign or the seventh? Is there any kind of escalating?
For some violations, yes. There is a habitual offender escalation in the vehicle code. And that is separate from the one primary section of the vehicle code that is most often the repeat offender, which is driving without a license, driving while suspended. There are escalating consequences the more frequently you are cited and found guilty of that violation. But absent being found guilty of like 6 red light violations, it's every time you come to court, it's like you've never been found guilty of it before. That is for consequences in my office. That is separate from what PennDOT may decide to do for your right to a driver's license. But as it relates to fines and penalties that I have the ability to impose, there are very few violations that have those escalating consequences.
If I can, forgive me, I realize we're talking about traffic, but as long as our magistrate here,
What do you have? What are you pending, Steve? Is it a 1543B? What do you got?
With automatic, non-discretionary jail time.
I'm talking about, we talked a bit about code enforcement as far as that's one of the things we've frustrated, where we've had some folks that are,
Yeah.
in our mind, frequent violators of the building code, the inspections code. What tools in the toolbox for that?
So, when I ran for this job, I talked a lot about code enforcement and how important it was to me as a career real estate attorney. I know how important it is to our first responders. I know how important code compliance is in safe buildings and an aesthetically pleasing community how important those things are to residents and what a draw it can be to potential new residents. But again, the only potential consequence I have available to me on the record is a monetary fine. I don't approach code enforcement from the perspective of a fine is the only thing that can happen here. I approach code enforcement hearings from how are we going to cure this violation? How much time do you need to cure it? What are the criteria from the municipality's perspective that would cause them to believe the violation has been cured? Because it is important to me, code compliance is as important to me as traffic law compliance is. Like, the rules are the rules, the law is the law, you may not like it, you may have an excuse for why you were speeding on Gilkison Road, you may have an excuse for why you ran that red light because you were on your way to an emergency at the hospital, but the traffic law is the traffic law, regardless of your explanation for wanting to avoid points on your license. Similarly too, people may come to my office having pled not guilty to a code violation with what to them seems like a justifiable explanation for not getting a permit before they tore down their 8-foot retaining wall and rebuilt a new one. I'm not speaking of anything specific, that's just the first thing that came to mind, but the bottom line is, if the code requires a permit, how are we gonna get you to issuance of the permit? That's how I approach hearings. What are the requirements? Are the requirements required as the municipality has enunciated them? Is that what the code in fact requires? And if so, let's help you get there. Let's understand that it may take some time to get the engineering drawings with the stamps, that contractors, it takes a long time to get them on the books, to get those things scheduled. But if we're making a good faith effort to get there, I'm going to allow the time for all of us to get there. But if we're not making a good faith effort, the only potential consequence, the only disposition I have is a monetary fine. That then, as with everything else I enter in my court, is appealable to the Court of Common Pleas.
Is that fine for the person who's not gonna get an escalating fine, or there's a top number?
It can be a per day, a flat violation times per day. And it's up to the person who's in my courtroom on behalf of the municipality to ask me for what they believe is the appropriate fine under the code. And then I will enter a disposition based on the totality of the circumstances. But it is not escalating insofar as this is the 5th time you are here for the same violation over 5 years. It's more, could it be $1,000 per day for each day this violation has existed without cure, looking at this case and this violation only? Do you see what I mean?
One thing I could add to that, one of the things the magistrate and I have worked on really since she came in the office and I came into this position was in the formation of our social services coordinator, one of the things that we identified as a gap in really the system was that ability to identify root cause. And so in a case of a dilapidated home where you have code violation, where you have a hoarding situation due to mental health or underlying mental health issues, there was never a vehicle in place where we could deliver resources to those individuals and we could minimize the potential for repeat offense. So what we've done now is, in conjunction with any of these violations, our social services coordinator will clearly identify those individuals and those homes and work to deliver those resources, whatever they are, whether it's through the Department of Aging, whether it's through any other resource that she has at her disposal, to really help those individuals to prevent that situation from occurring and give them more treatment. We know that they're likely consumers of mental health services. They're likely repeat consumers. They're likely either don't have a caregiver to make sure they're taking their meds, or a myriad of situations that we've encountered. So one of the gaps in the actual system really is that ability to deliver that resource and sort of plug that gap. So I will say that one of the things that we offer here that's unique is that ability to deliver that resource when it comes to that ability to solve that problem and prevent that.
And the mechanism that we've put in place to make that happen is that in cases where, through maybe the first hearing I've had on a code violation where that may be helpful, I add Ms. Stilson as a notice recipient for future hearing notices. So that she can then, I mean, as all cases are, except for juveniles, they're open to the public. So anybody can always come, but it's a notice to her
Right.
that this defendant, this homeowner, this resident might be able to might benefit from the services that are available. Because very often they just don't know.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
No, but I did want to thank, well, everybody that participated in the hourly discussion, but also Judge Wheatley, because in 28 years of me being here, she is the first person in that position to ever offer to come and speak to the commission. And also, she made a presentation at our last staff meeting. And I think it's very beneficial because, again, we all collectively receive the calls from residents who are frustrated with the process. And having, I think, additional information to provide when we take those calls or emails is definitely beneficial. And so I appreciate you taking the time to do that.
And in the future, if commission would like me to start coming regularly and bring data about case filings and timing, I'm happy to start providing sort of concrete reports on what's actually happening in the district so that it can be a source of information when you're getting complaints, so that you can reflect on that in light of actual data
Please,
about
thank
what's
you.
going on, so let me know.
Is there anything, like you mentioned, someone can always appeal to Court of Common Pleas? And you get things where people go, oh, this is another person's appealing. You get graded on that as far as?
No, my office gets notice of every appeal filed from any decision I make. It gets filed in the file, and that's all our involvement, because whether my bosses are the voters of the community, but there is no review or data posted anywhere regarding appeals and how the case plays out on appeal from a decision that I make.
Okay, right, thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Hey, guys, thank you. And I just want to note too, when Hillary's leaving here, one of the things she mentioned was marriages. And I just want to point out that the good thing about Hillary's work is that she marries everybody who comes in. And that sounds like that's simple, or that's basic, or that's common. It is not as simple or common or basic as you think in Allegheny County. So I do want to applaud her for that. Again, that's, no matter who you are in Hillary's office, you come in there to get married, she marries you. And that's a nice thing.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
We've got 10 minutes. We had Andrew on the docket. Is this the condensed version?
Sure. If you want it to be, it can be.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Good evening, Commission. I'll make it as brief as I can. In our presentation we had in late May for our June renewal for our property and casualty insurance, I notified the Commission that we were going to go out to market for our workers' comp policy, which has not, at least from my research, been marketed since the early 90s. So it's been a long time and a long history with the trust that we're in, which is called MRM Workers' Comp Pooled Trust. I'll refer to it as the trust hereafter. They're a competent provider. They provide workers' comp insurance to 200 plus communities. Last count, I think there were about 220 communities, if not more. We're one of their longest policy holders. We have the highest dividend within their policy. So we've been a long time high premium, high dividend ratepayer. But some things have happened in the last couple of years, starting about 5 years ago, that we really started to see things changing in the trust, specifically with their communications to us. We're one of their largest ratepayers, as I said, and we would have things like, hey, your mod's going up, 12%, 15%, and there's no community. It's just, here's a letter, you owe us $200,000 more next year. With no communication, no explanation as to why it was happening, I would have to call and reach out to them. At the very least, reach out to our manager. I mean, I'm the finance director, and I respect my position, but at least reach out to the manager and tell him that this is happening. a couple years ago, they lowered our dividend by 200,000 and didn't tell us. We had no idea what was happening. And we had to call again. It obviously got around to the different municipalities that all saw their dividends going down, and there was really no good explanation other than the trustees decided that the dividend will be X, and that's what you're gonna get. So we have no control over that, and it's not all tied just to us. It's tied to the pool because it's in a pooled trust. Also, their loss mitigation, while it ebbs and flows, their loss mitigation isn't consistent. And what I mean by that is they aren't really partnering with us as maybe we would want to help us mitigate our losses in the workers' comp arena. And we think the private market may help us better with that. We notified them that we were going to market and they should be on notice that we could leave the pool. No communication thereafter. I don't know that they care if we leave the trust, quite frankly. So that being said, they can still be a very good provider for premium, and the panel that we have now of the doctors and what our employees will not know a difference if we switched. We verified with the recommended workers' comp provider that they can use the same panel, so really the employees won't notice a difference. If they do get injured, the same procedures will be in place, that they go to the same doctors that we trust as an employer as well to do that as well. So we went to market in late June. We marketed to a number of companies. Only 2 bid on new to the private market, AmTrust and Encova. There's really 3 components for the education of the public. There's 3 components to any dividend or any workers' comp policy. First is the premium based on your payroll. So our large payroll, there's a premium per working class. So police officers, you pay a different rate than you do a public works than you do for me sitting behind a desk. Pretty self-explanatory. There's also a modification factor based on your history. We have, like I mentioned with the trust, our modification factor keeps going up, and I don't agree with it. I look at it and I say it doesn't justify why we're paying $255,000 more, as you saw in the numbers, for our modification factor. I just don't agree with it. And when you reach back out to them, to the trust, they give you stats, and I say, well, when I look at these stats, this doesn't jive. Well, it's the size of your payroll. Well, our payroll's consistent. We're not a growing municipality. We're not, so on and so. It just isn't jiving.
It's not adding up.
And and their excuse, I would just say excuse, their justification is that's what the actuary is telling us. And so what you have in the private market is the ability to communicate with said actuaries. And those are some of the benefits that you have, is that you can discuss modification factors. You get more discounts in the market when you go out to market and go into the private market, because we can get credit for our safety committee. We have a few things we need to do to formalize and certify it with the state. We'll get another 5% discount. It's stuff we're already doing and those types of things. So the private market has its advantages, as does the trust. I'm not saying it's not bad coverage, but it's different.
What are the downsides?
Say again?
What are the downsides?
Is that we control it. So we're betting on ourselves. The downsides of what? The trust?
Yeah.
Is you don't have the control. You don't have the access to the underwriters, the loss safety, a customer service, dedicated customer service, and customer success manager, and those types of things. That doesn't exist in the pool that we're in.
I would think with the trust, it's like if your mod is bad, in theory, being the pool is better because the
Right.
risk is spread out.
Correct.
If your mod's good, stand on your own.
Right.
Now, some of that mod is typically the claims use private carrier. You negotiate, not negotiate, but talks. Why do you have the reserve on this
Right.
claim? What do you think? Sounds like with the trust, there is no,
No, there's no budging there. Yeah. So-
that's a big deal.
It is. And so I know I'm short on time here, but
Sorry.
there's also the third component is the dividend part, right? And that's really the only thing that is still driving the possibility of the trust. With a private market, the dividend is based on you. It's not based on the pool. It's based on, there is a grid that says you get this percentage. If you make this, you get this. You get it the 18 months after policy date, whether you leave them or not.
Right.
The trust, on the other hand, pays out over 9 years. It can be a higher dividend, yes, but it's paid out over a much longer period of time. In addition, that if you leave the trust, you then forego that, any accumulated dividend. or future dividend therein. So that is something that I factored into the analysis. Even when you factor that in, given where we're at today and even a slight decrease, I am recommending that we move to a private market and go with AmTrust for a variety of factors. But I think one of the big things I want to say is that we had a pooled trust for our health insurance up until 2014.
I was gonna say, we've been through this before.
We've had success moving out on our own. There's nothing to say we can't go back to a trust later. There's other trusts out there. And there's nothing saying that we can't remarket in 3 years. Depending on our level of service and what we like, there's nothing saying that we can't treat this like we do healthcare. We've just never looked at it consistently. Moving to AmTrust, we believe, will give us not only premium savings and some premium relief over the next 3 years, it'll also enhance our safety committee. And ultimately, that's what we want. It's not really all about the bottom line, because the bottom line will follow if the safety of your employees is premium number one.
Yeah.
And we feel that this can become a better program than what we have now by using the partnership with a private market.
Given, only the two bit, I agree with you about making a change. We got scared the last time with healthcare, this big, rebate, like it was, we did just fine. The rates, like you mentioned, police officers and so forth, and certainly the private sector will negotiate to say, hey, can you knock 5% off? Then you get enough people competing, enough companies competing that you might get trimming there or scheduled credits or that sort of thing. So even if we don't get all of the savings by going from the trust to AmTrust, it feels like it gives us more opportunities for future renewals. Maybe if not this time around, we can do even better next time this comes out.
Correct, depending on, we're betting on ourselves.
Yes.
And I trust us more than I trust at this time. I trust that we have the wherewithal to do this for, number one, for the safety of our employees, that's number one. But number two is that I think that with the things we can do and get this taken care of, that the premium will follow.
Controlling that mod is such a big factor. I mean, to say, okay, if 1.5, you don't want 1.5, you think 1.2 is more realistic, that's a big swing in our direction.
Yep.
Well, that's the other part of the answer to Commissioner Perella's question is, and Andrew said it a couple times, going to the private market, we are essentially betting on ourselves.
Right.
Versus a pooled trust where if there is a major incident, the impacts of that are spread across everyone else that's in the trust.
Right.
So, but it works the other way too.
Sure.
If those things happen in other communities, they're also spread across the trust
Yeah, we're
and
dealing with
it
that.
impacts our dividends.
Right. We don't know, let's say, how much of that they will tell us is because some other communities are not doing as well as we are.
So we're gonna make the recommendation, I believe, to move to AmTrust.
Sounds good to me.
Okay.
Thanks, Andrew.
1 minute, board updates, what do you got? Nothing, I got nothing on my side. Yeah, we're over.
You can always start late if you want.
Commission, connect as its legislative session tomorrow.
The reason why Commissioner Swager Wilson is not here this evening is she's presenting the results of the study on two parts of this evening. So I want to make sure they got that information as soon as it's practical. And so she is presenting that information to them now. Good.
All right, let's head over. Thank you much.
You have me on the screen, Jeff?
It's frozen.
Yeah.